How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, and welcome to your 2020 year ahead horoscope for Virgo, Sun, and Rising. Thank you guys so much for being here and liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. In this video, we're going to be going over all of the major transits of 2020 by each quarter and how they'll be affecting you. And now, while there is a lot of astrology happening next year, we're going to be briefly going over the major events so you guys have a general idea of what's going to be going on for you guys this year. Now, if you would like a more in-depth and specific analysis of what's going to be happening for you for 2020, please be sure to check out my website where you guys can purchase a year ahead reading from me, where I'm going to be going over all of the specific transits and the big major events that are going to be affecting you specifically for your chart for 2020. And if you like this year ahead horoscope and you also like weekly horoscopes and monthly horoscopes, please be sure to check out my page and subscribe for all of the latest astrology info and updates. And also follow me on Twitter if you guys like to talk about astrology and engage with me as well as a bunch of other astrologers. If you're not on astrology Twitter, get on there already. And if you'd like to support me and my work and get access to exclusive content and knowledge about astrology, be sure to check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/White Light Astrology. And now, with all that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the horoscope. So before we begin 2020, we're actually ending 2019 off with Jupiter entering not Sagittarius, Capricorn, where it will be for the whole year of 2020. Now, this is a pretty important thing. Jupiter is the planet, of course, of abundance, good luck, fortune, faith, opportunity, spirituality. Jupiter is looking for us to believe in things. And as Jupiter moves into Capricorn, it's not necessarily the best sign for Jupiter because Jupiter is in fall in Capricorn, which means it doesn't necessarily work as well as it could. It doesn't have the availability of resources that it can use, or not really having everything that it needs to do the best job that it can. However, what is good about Jupiter in Capricorn is the fact that whatever it is that you have, you're going to be able to utilize, and you kind of have to make the best out of the situation at hand. Now, Jupiter is moving into your fifth house, where the fifth house is all about love, romance, children. It's also about art and creativity, what your hobbies are, what excites you. It's an extension of the first house. So it's basically what your unique gifts and abilities are and what you can create into this world. And as Jupiter goes through Capricorn during this time, there's going to be a big expansion and opportunity with what you can do in this area. Now, when we actually start 2020, we're beginning it off with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction happening in Capricorn, which is a huge, huge deal. It's a very big transit. I would take the time to look into this because it's a pretty big deal. However, the best way to explain it simply, because we don't have the time to go over everything with it, is Saturn, the planet of responsibility, obligation, of walls, barriers, restrictions, limits, long-term things, discipline, authority. As it's been in Capricorn, it's been showing you what area, where you can be struggling in this area of the fifth house for you guys. So of love, romance, children, what you're passionate about, any type of fun stuff that you might be wanting to do. Saturn can be causing some issues there. And as Saturn conjoins Pluto, this is kind of not necessarily getting dealt a bad hand. This isn't anything that's going to happen overnight. This has been building up over a couple years. So you're probably very aware of what the situation looks like. But as Saturn conjoins Pluto, this is where it's time to get a grip and a limit on all of the things that could have changed for you in this area and all of the things that can be holding you back. And it's kind of time to make a decision to do something different about it, which is really important. And then as we move forward, we have the first of 3 Mercury retrogrades of 2020. This one happening in the 7th house for you guys of Pisces. So the sign of Pisces, or I should say before you get into that, let's talk about Mercury retrogrades. We are talking about reviewing, rethinking, replanning, readjusting. Mercury, the planet of communication, of ideas, of how we think. When it goes retrograde, it's just a time to rethink, review, do everything over again, almost in a sense. And as it's in Pisces, this is happening in your 7th house of relationships. Now, that doesn't just mean intimate relationships, but this could also mean professional relationships, formal relationships, personal and intimate, all of them. It doesn't matter. It's one-on-one individual relationships specifically. Now, as Mercury retrogrades through here, you're going to be rethinking, reviewing, going over any type of miscommunication you might have had in relationships during this time. But it's just a Mercury retrograde. It's not the biggest deal of this year. You will get through it, and it will just be a temporary time. But as we move forward, the next big thing we've got going on is Saturn is ingressing into Aquarius. This is a big deal. However, Saturn won't be here for the whole year. Saturn will eventually retrograde, go back into Capricorn, where it has been since the end of 2017. However, As Saturn dips into Aquarius, this is going to be quite a big change in theme. Now, Saturn is all about restriction, rules, discipline, long-term things, being more of an adult, getting a grip, and being more disciplined and, self-reliant on things. And as Saturn moves into Aquarius, it's going into its other home sign. So this is good. But it changes from Capricorn being so earthy and physical and tangible to Aquarius, more idealistic, more spiritual in nature, more, and I say spiritual in the idea of the spirit of something. What is the essence of something? What is the idea that connects it to a movement? And that's what Aquarius is all about. Connecting or disconnecting. And as Saturn goes through Aquarius, where there's this obligation around either connecting or disconnecting, this is going to be brought to you guys through the 6th house lens of work, of routine, your day-to-day habits, your health. Basically, anything that you're doing every single day that could even be your employment, that's where you're going to start to see more restrictions and limitations come in, but also a bigger sense of responsibility and duty in this area. But then we end the first quarter of 2020 off with Jupiter conjoining Pluto. And like I said earlier, this has a lot to do with basically really utilizing what you can or what you have in any given situation for the best of your abilities. What we realize here is while Pluto's in your 5th house and there's a lot of change, there's a lot of drama going around your 5th house of what you love and what you can create and what you do, Jupiter conjoining it is kind of realizing that whatever you have to do, whatever you have to use to kind of get over this, is the only thing that you have, and it is a pretty big deal, but it will get you out of it. Jupiter conjoining Pluto at first is just going to feel kind of daunting trying to really utilize what little you might have here, but it will come back later. At the end of this year, we'll be talking about it, and you will be able to use it. You'll be just fine. It just sounds weird at first, but Jupiter conjoining Pluto kind of changes your belief. You kind of have to change your belief about what you can make work, and you have to have that belief and that faith in yourself in order to do it, in order to achieve it. Then as we start the second quarter of 2020, we started off with the nodes moving into Gemini and Sagittarius. Now, the nodes are basically the points that we put on a chart to symbolize where the eclipses are going to be happening. So the eclipses are going to now be happening in Gemini and Sagittarius. Now, this is also another big theme change because when you have eclipses, they kind of take all of your attention and make you focus on this area, wherever they're at. Now, the North Node, where the North Node is going to be entering Gemini, and the North Node is Rahu. It's like the dragon's head. It's what we're wanting to consume. It's what we're hungry for. It's the direction that we're going in and what we're kind of focused on. Now, as the North Node goes into the sign of Gemini, this is going to be more focused on what information are we receiving, what are we understanding, what are we communicating, and going towards more what we know, what we do understand, and what information is being given to us. Now, this is going to be going into your 10th house of career, of public vocation, how people recognize you. The 10th house is also the top of the sky in your chart, so it kind of symbolizes what everyone can see. So as the North Node goes in this area, you're going to be more focused on getting more information, being more driven towards understanding more of what you can do with your career, with your public vocation, with what you're doing. However, as the South Node moves into Sagittarius, this is kind of letting go of belief. This is kind of letting go of vision, letting go of the journey, and not necessarily in the sense of letting it go that it's bad, but we're not moving in that direction anymore. And as it goes into Sagittarius, we're not moving in that direction of what can be or what belief is there, what we can, visualize in our heads. It's about moving forward towards what we know and what we understand and what information is given to us that's in black and white. Now, as the South Node moves into Sagittarius, it's also moving into your 4th house of the home, of the family, of the private and the personal life. So you might be moving away from this area and start moving towards focusing on your career and what can be accomplished there. And the first thing that happens with that is on May 12th, we have Venus station retrograde in Gemini. And this is going to be on the eclipses, so this is going to be a whole thing for you guys. But Venus is the planet of love and value and connection. She wants you to indulge and have fun. And as she's in Gemini, she's been searching for more stimulation, more understanding, more information. And as Venus retrogrades, this is a value switch, a value shift in kind of changing that direction of what does stimulate you, what does excite you, what do you find interest and passion in. And this is happening in your 10th house of your career. So you might have a change in what you do or what you actually find enjoyable, or maybe find another niche inside of your career that is more geared towards your likes and your personality. But as Venus retrogrades right here, you're going to be having a switch in what you value when it comes to work. And then, of course, we have the second Mercury retrograde in Cancer, or I should say the second Mercury retrograde, which is happening in the sign of Cancer. Now, of course, again, Mercury retrogrades are a time to rethink and revisit. This is in the sign of Cancer, however, where we're talking about our needs. We're talking about nurturing. We're talking about protecting. And this is happening in your 11th house of friendships, of groups of people, of networks. And so this is where you're going to maybe have a miscommunication with some groups of people, with your friends, maybe some coworkers, whatever it is. But this is going to be the time to really reflect on what needs to be addressed and saying what needs to be said. Then as we move into the third quarter of 2020, and we're at the halfway mark, we have Saturn retrogressing back into Capricorn. Now, Saturn was in your 6th house, making you focus on your work and what duties and obligations you might have there. But as Saturn moves back into Capricorn, it comes back into that 5th house area of love, of romance, of hobbies, of creativity. And so you're going to have to start addressing problems or any roadblocks that you might have in that area of your chart. But then just a few weeks later, we're going to be having Mars enter its shadow phase. Now, Mars will be retrograding this year, and at this point, it is in Aries, where we're going to be feeling more charged up, more energized to do things. However, it will be slowing down at this time as it enters shadow, so where you were feeling that energy, you're going to start seeing that kind of come to a halt. While, mentally you might be energized to do something, physically it might be a little bit different, and realistically, that energy might not be matched for you. Now, Mars is a malefic planet. It is about heating up, burning. It does sever, it does cut, so there can be some issues with this Mars retrograde. But the most important thing is that this is happening in your 8th house. Now, I would recommend, especially since you guys are Virgo risings or suns, look into the 8th house to get a better understanding of what it means specifically for you and your situation. Because the 8th house rules a lot of different things. It rules death, it rules debt, it rules inheritances, other people's money, what other people have that you don't see. The 8th house is a hidden house, so it means that we can't always see what's going on in there. So that might help you guys learning about it and understanding it better to get a better idea of what Mars retrograde in your 8th house is going to do. But then right after that, Venus leaves its shadow and it starts to move forward again and start to tread new territory as the morning star in Gemini in your 10th house. So this is when you're going to start finding more of that stimulation, going after and searching and seeking out more of what you want to do when it comes to your career. Then from August 4th, from August 27th, Mars is going to begin squaring Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn while it's in Aries. And this is going to be a big highlight of the year as Mars retrogrades, because as Mars starts to square Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, you might realize that as Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto in your 5th house, there's a lot of energy that's kind of holding you back, but you're having to focus on when it comes to your 5th house. Like the area of children, of creativity, hobbies, love, and stuff like that. Mars in your 8th house is wanting to change things up. Mars in Aries is wanting to be direct about what's hidden and what's not exactly visible. And you might have some problems with that, because as Mars squares Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, what you want may not be what you're seeing with what you're doing. Like what you're trying to do may not reciprocate not the responses, but the result that you're looking for. But we end the third quarter with Mars stationing retrograde. And as Mars stations retrograde, this is where you kind of say, you know what, fuck it, this is holding me back. I need to address whatever is holding me back in my want area, so you can actually get it when you start to find it a little bit more. Because as Mars goes through your 8th house, you're not going to necessarily see what exactly is going on, or what you're not going to see the result of what you're putting your energy into. And as Mars retrogrades and moves backwards, this is the time to start maybe revisioning what it is that you want, or revisioning what it is that you're creating. Maybe going over what roadblocks that you have in your way of what you're wanting to create, so you can start to move forward again. But as we go into the fourth quarter, which is the main event of 2020, the big grand finale, we still have Mars retrograde, but going over again, making that square to Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto. So this is that time of, cutting those tides, cutting those cords, rearranging things to where they're going to work better for you, and actually start focusing on whatever roadblocks you might have in your way, and also actually utilizing what little you might have and creating what it is that you want, or dealing with the situation at hand that revolves around your fifth house, which can be a lot of different things. However, as Mars retrogrades and squares all this stuff, this is where you're going to be addressing whatever's in your way in that area. But then on October 14th, we have the third and final Mercury retrograde of the year, and this one's happening in Scorpio. So this one's happening in your third house. So Mercury, the planet of communication, is going to be retrograding in the house of communication, of ideas, of teaching and speaking and understanding. The third house I also like to use as a house of how you utilize yourself. You know, how do you utilize what you have and what you know? And as Mercury retrogrades right here, where we're talking about rethinking, reviewing, going over, it is going to be in the sign of Scorpio, where we're talking about the hidden things, the stuff that was kind of buried away. Those things that might have been hidden or not seen before kind of come up to the surface, and the truth kind of gets revealed and the secrets kind of come out. And as Mercury retrogrades in Scorpio and through your third house, this might be a time where you get new information and start changing your ideas about what it is that you should be doing that's going to help you a little bit more. But then on November 12th, that's when we're going to have Jupiter conjoin Pluto for the third and final time. Now, again, like I said in the beginning of this video, Jupiter in Capricorn is really about utilizing what you have, making the best out of a shitty situation in essence. And as Jupiter conjoins Pluto, this is where you start to see the mindset change that you had, the belief change that you had over this past year, really start to change your reality, really start to change your results. And this is a positive thing, because if you make the best out of what's given to you, you're going to get rewarded once Jupiter conjoins Pluto. And what's great is the next day after that, that's when Mars is going to station direct. And Mars will get to move forward, where after it kind of handled its beef for a second with Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto, it will fly forward again, where it will again square Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto again. But once it starts to move forward, this is where you can start to go over what you were trying to do earlier and actually start to make some ground with it. And then as we get to the end of November into the beginning of December is when we have the second set of eclipses, this time with the focus on Sagittarius. And this is where you're going to start to be focusing on kind of letting go and releasing, what isn't the things that you thought you might have want, or the visualization of what you thought you might want of where you're living, or whatever, dreams or hopes you might have had about your family or your parents. That sounds kind of weird of saying release your dreams and your hopes, but the idea is kind of straying away from that area of your life and actually start to close out that chapter and start to move forward towards your career area. But then we end 2020 off with the bang. This is the big finale, the big event, and that is Jupiter and Saturn both moving into Aquarius and conjoining each other. Now, Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions are a very big deal. I would recommend looking into those too so you have a better understanding of it. However, Jupiter, the planet of good luck, of fortune, of faith, as it moves into Aquarius, it starts to expand in the area of connection, of networks. That's what Aquarius is about. It's about expanding in connecting with other things and possibly even disconnecting and finding the room where it comes to disconnecting. However, the big thing is with Jupiter bringing us, or I should say bringing opportunities, bringing more gifts, bringing, good luck. With this happening in your 6th house, this is bigger opportunities with work, with your employment, with your health, with what you're doing every single day. And that can be a positive thing if you like a good workload. And that's what Jupiter in Aquarius is going to bring you, when it goes through your 6th house. The big thing, though, is as Saturn goes in there too, when you get, a lot of good things, comes a lot of big responsibilities. And Saturn's going to be helping you address those responsibilities that are given to you within that 6th house as you get more work with it, with Jupiter going in there. And so with that being said, that's 2020 for you guys. It's a big year. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. There are a lot of big things going on this year, but we can get through it because there's better times ahead, of course. But with that being said, again, thank you guys so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. If you would like a more detailed and specific analysis of what's going to be going on for you specifically in 2020, please book a reading with me. I'd love to go over your chart and let you know what's going to be happening for you this year. And so with that being said, I'll be seeing you guys next time.